Howdy folks, and welcome to another episode of Cedarcraft. So today I wanted to talk about what you might be able to do if you're working in a framework or programming language that doesn't have bindings to Cedar. It turns out that we can use this really cool tool called Cedar Agent that'll let us use Cedar from any system where we can make HTTP requests. So as a concrete example, I've been playing around with this Dream framework, which is in OCaml. And right now there are not OCaml bindings to the Rust implementation of Cedar. So it might seem like we're out of luck, but we can use this tool called Cedar Agent that'll allow us to use Cedar as long as we can make HTTP requests. So first off, as a kind of meta point, the way I found this was by going to this Cedar Awesome repo. And anytime you're trying to do something with Cedar and you wish you had a tool for it, but you don't know if it exists, Cedar Awesome is a great place to go check it out. And so, the first thing I did is I went and looked at the language platform and integrations. And Cedar's got bindings for a bunch of the most popular languages, official bindings for Java and Go, some syntax highlighting. Of course, there's Rust, which the official implementation is in. There's also unofficial WASM bindings, etc. In fact, we have these Cedar Pi bindings, which we've been using here in Cedarcraft the last several weeks. But there's no OCaml here. So at first it might seem like we're out of luck, but actually if we go up, there's this really interesting tool called Cedar Agent, and that's what we're going to use today. So if you jump over to the repo there, you can see that Cedar Agent is this server that you kind of run on the side, and you can make requests to do your authorization. So at a high level, what's going on is if you think about the way we've been using Cedar, like in our Cedar Pi demos, we have the application, and in the application we have some part of our apps and part of our state that is for Cedar stuff, right? So we've got our policies in there. We stored our entities. We did all this stuff. And then whenever we got a request, we would check is authorized by making a Cedar query. And then depending on what it said, we could make decisions. So this, unfortunately, is not going to work if we are in a different language, like OCaml, that doesn't have Cedar bindings. So instead what we're going to do is we're going to have our application, like in OCaml, let's say, and on the side, we're going to run Cedar Agent as a separate server. Let's label those just to make it a little bit clear. So maybe this is our Dream framework in OCaml where there's no bindings, and maybe this is our Cedar Agent server. And what happens instead is that Cedar Agent is going to wrap up the official Rust code, and it will allow us to do things like store our policies. Here in Cedar Agent, we can store our entities as well. In fact, we can even set the schema, which is super handy because it means that every time we, get, put, post, whatever, any kind of policy or entity, it'll check to make sure those are compatible with the schema. But then what's nice is when we get a request coming in, I guess we'll go back to red here, we get a request coming in, we can go and ask our separate Cedar Agent, is this authorized? And it'll send back yes or no, and the application can make a decision about what to do. Okay, so in a world like here, if we're using, say Cedar Pi, we can use Cedar directly in our application. In a world here, like if we're in, using OCaml and the Dream framework, we can't quite do that, but the Cedar Agent allows us to still benefit and use Cedar all the same. Okay, so hopefully that big picture makes sense. But enough gobbledygook, let's actually try to run some stuff. And the README here is super easy. It's really slick, quick to get set up. So you just clone the repo, cargo build, cargo run. Now I've already cloned it. I figure folks know how to do that. So here we got the repo. And in fact, I also already built it. It only takes a few seconds to build, but there you go. And when you run it, it spins up the server. And it's got this really slick Swagger UI that lets you interactively sort of explore the API. If we go down here, we got this link. If we open that up, so this is actually running on our local host, right? This is running Cedar Agent directly. And you can see all the API endpoints, right? So we can see what policies are installed. In fact, let's just do that now. Expect there shouldn't be any. So if we run get policies, sure enough, we get a 200, so that was okay. And we don't have any policies yet. And we can do this with a bunch of the other endpoints as well, right? We can add new policies. We can delete policies based on their IDs. We can do the same thing with schemas. And of course, we have the all-important is authorized API endpoint, which allows us to check if a given principal is allowed to access perform a particular action on some resource. Okay, so now we have Cedar Agent up and running. Before we end for today, I just wanted to show really quickly, they have some nice examples set up here in the Cedar Agent repo, which I've lost that tab, so I'll open her back up. And you can just run these from directly in the Cedar Agent repo. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up a schema. So now we have this command. Let's run it from within the Cedar Agent repo. This is just using curl to make the request directly, and it sets up a schema. This is not superhuman readable, but as we saw last time, you can take this JSON and use the Cedar command line interface to convert it to a human readable version if you want. If we go back over to our Swagger UI and we get the schema, we can see that our server will spit that out, right? So here it is, at least with the JSON pretty printed. And this describes again the shape of all the entities and what actions are available, right? So it looks like here we've got some kind of document thing in this example, users, roles, and documents, and people can create, delete, get, or list them, right? So that's, now we've got a schema. Let's add some policies real quick. We'll take another one of their examples. So, we can put a policy into the database. And if we went back to Swagger and did a get, we would see that. And we can add some entities as well. So now we put a bunch of entities, a bunch of different users into the Cedar Agent. And now we can make is authorized requests. So here's an example that should come back as authorized. And sure enough, it is. If we go look at what that query actually looked like, right, we're just seeing, can admin1 create this document? And according to the policies, that is going to be allowed. We could dig through this, you could see it. But the one thing that I really like that I wanted to show you is if we do something goofy, like suppose we want to update the entities, right? So we already added these entities. Let's suppose that we screwed up and we said that admin1's type was foo, okay? So now let's go back and let's try to add our entities again. And this is neat, right? Cedar Agents actually told us that's not going to work, right? So we got back an error code, 400. That's not going to fly. And the reason is that the content does not match the schema. In particular, this entity has type foo, and foo is not a valid entity. So one of the things that's actually really nice about Cedar Agent is because it has that schema registered, every single request gets checked dynamically, which can help give you a lot of confidence and making sure you're actually checking the policies that you think you are. So anyways, I'm pretty excited about this because it's going to let me go ahead and start playing around with Cedar, even in languages like OCaml that don't have Cedar bindings directly. And it's also a super fast way to get up and running with Cedar. So if you haven't tried that out, I encourage you to dig into it a little bit more. But thanks, folks, and I'll catch you on the next episode of CedarCraft.